This is the maps of the judges. Caleb and Joshua have died, and there is no king in Israel. What we understand from Judges chapter 1 is that the cities are still dominated by the Canaanites even after the Israelites have settled the land. They have by no means claimed all the territory that eventually the tribes would have, let alone all the territory that was promised to Abraham. So down here we have Moab, and up here we still have Ammon. All along the coast we have Philistia. The Philistines, this is why they constantly have battles with them, because not only do they have the whole coast and the major tradeways through here, but there's this little section right here that goes all the way to Jerusalem. And even up here they have this big swath up here. In Jesus' time, this would have been the area of Samaria, and up here would be the area known as Galilee. This map shows all the different areas that each of the judges took place. Going from north to south, Shamgar took place near Beth Anath, Elon up above Mount Tabor, Gideon just below him around Ophrah. Over to the east we have Barack, whose story takes place near the Sea of Galilee, and Hayer over near Cayman. All of these stories happened near Jesus' hometown. Nazareth would be right under the word Barack. Moving to the south to the area that would later be known as Judea, we have Tolah's story near Samir, Abdon's story near Pirathon. Over to the east again, Jephthah, his story takes place near Mizpah. Then we go even further south to some of the more recognizable cities like Bethel, Ramah, Jerusalem, Bethlehem. This is where we see the stories of Ehud and Deborah. That's near Bethel and Ramah. Samson mostly takes place around the city of Zorah, and a little bit outside of that, but that's the region. Then you have Isban around Bethlehem and Othniel around Debir. So here's the map for Deborah and Barack. That Barack was supposed to be the judge, but he didn't want to do anything on his own, so God allowed the prophetess Deborah to aid him, and they battled a man named Sisera. Now, Sisera came out of the Asher territory, and Barack came from the Sea of Galilee area, and they battled right here in Issachar claimed land. Now, this is just south of Mount Tabor, very close to where modern-day Nazareth is. Now, you might recall this is the battle where they had iron chariots, and the ground was so soggy that they got stuck, and the Israelites were able to defeat them. Now, Sisera himself fled north and then tried to go into Zebulun territory, and this is where he fell asleep in the tent of a woman who put a peg through his head. Yeah, that's that story right there. Now, Gideon's story happens around the area of Issachar as well. Now, if we're zooming in, we can see this all happens just south of Mount Tabor again, and his forces gather at this little brown spot right here, not too far from the spring of Harod. This is where God told Gideon that he had too many men, and he allowed some to leave, and then he told them to only pick ones who drank water a certain way. This would have been within walking distance of Jesus' hometown of Nazareth. Now, the story is that the 300 men encircled the army of Midian, and they would have been in this valley right here. So this is where they hid the torches inside the pots, smashed the pots, shouted really loud, and the mass confusion and the armies all ran away, and so they gave chase. So when we zoom out again, they gave chase past Abel Mahola, past Succoth and Penuel, all the way through all the currently occupied areas and into Ammon again. Now, Samson's story, while one of the most famous in the Bible, does not happen over a good deal of land. It's actually fairly localized, and mostly happens within what would be claimed by the tribe of Judah. Now, of course, he starts off in Zorah, which is just inside the Dan territory, and he travels to Ashkelon. Most likely, given how they traveled back then, he would have followed the river up to the travel path and then down to Ashkelon. But what's most interesting here is not the path of his adventure, but actually when he carries the city gates and puts them up on a hill. I don't think people realize just how far it is. Here's where he grabs the gates, and all the way over here is where he leaves them. So this last map wraps up the time of the judges. And we have two things going on here. First, we have the migration of the people of Dan. They're in this area right down here that includes Kiriath Jearim and Joppa. And they do migrate all the way up here. This is the beginning of their fleeing from God's will. Not that necessarily this migration is evil in and of itself, but this was the area that was given to them. So for them to move on their own means that they didn't trust what God had given to them. And of course, as a lot of you know, Dan is known as the lost tribe of Israel. They never came back after Assyria conquered the northern kingdom. However, the other thing going on here is this zoomed in little territory here. There was a war that went on with Benjamin. Because of some great evils that happened, Benjamin actually had war with the rest of Israel, got conquered, but then they had to go and steal some wives so that they didn't disappear from existence. None of this was applauded by God. It's just a record of what actually happened.